All right, let's carry on then on discussion as to what's happening in Diepsloot. We bring in Professor Saths Cooper to weigh in on those developments and protests that we have seen in the past few days on the issue of illegal immigration. A very good afternoon to you, Prof. It's always a pleasure to see you here on SABC News, sir.
I wish I could say it was a pleasure, but it's a pleasure to be with you. These are very, very trying times.
I think we're always talking to you during trying times, but nonetheless, it is what it is, and that's why we call you on the show. But, you know, we're talking about what's happening in Diepsloot at the moment, and we'd really like you to weigh in on it around the issue of social cohesion. I mean, I was listening to the police commissioner now speaking to my colleague, Griselda Lewis, who asked a very important question of, you know, is the situation now out of control? And the police commissioner is saying, no, it's not out of control. And my colleague rightly saying, but someone has died, someone has been killed. Can we at this point say that the situation has reached a point where we can say it is out of control? Or do you agree with the police commissioner that it's not there yet?
It's a pity that the newly inducted police commissioner has to be put in the situation of actually telling us something that is quite unbelievable. Indeed, I know that the minister has expressed previously in discussions with some of us that the underlying problems that the police confront are socioeconomic. And I wish that the commissioner repeats this, because our situation in this country has gone from bad to appalling. None of us can forget what happened. Well, our younger viewers won't know this, but in 1985, there was the burning in the East Rand of people suspected of being Mpimpis at that time. We can recall Desmond Tutu weighing in to prevent somebody from being torched to death. And the notorious necklace victim, the first victim of the notorious necklace was Makis Kosana. We're still seeing this kind of behavior in our country, and the people perpetrating it are tragically very young individuals. We should also bear in mind that the forces of law and order, such as they may be, have shown serious defects, and the president's appearance at the Human Rights Commission is ample testimony that the center is not holding. So from Minister Motsoaledi is trying, but we have tended to evade the critical issues confronting us. So for me, the big issues are the poverty levels, the unemployment levels, the inequality levels. Those triple issues underpin everything that we do, and young people are completely removed from societal processes flow, and we are sitting on a ticking time bomb. To label some of it as criminality, it may be true, but that's not the whole picture. It cannot be that as we're getting out of COVID, with the devastation we've experienced, and the president for once is not missing in action, he has made his voice heard at a critical time, but the issue of immigrants and undocumented persons, etc., have loomed for us since the dawn of democracy. It's a pity that some of the recommendations that our first Minister of Home Affairs, Chief Mangosuthu Buthelezi, put forward, with Wilmot James, by the way, being one of those, these were not looked at carefully, perhaps because it was people from another political persuasion, but we are at crisis modality in this country in all spheres. Things are not working, and we saw more recently, July, the Defense Force caught napping. We saw the police services caught napping. Who can also forget what happened in 2008 in Alex, when this kind of Afrophobia became apparent. The president on the 1st of September 2019 had to confront this happening in Jeppestown, in the heart of Johannesburg. Now, whilst the rest of us in this country may feel differently about different issues, the fact is that law and order has broken down. Our people don't feel glued to the processes that happen in democracy. They feel left out. From the comfort of our middle-class surroundings, we don't experience the harsh realities that our people experience, and therefore that inability to be meaningful in one's life and to kith and kin shows itself in this horrific phobia against neighboring Africans.
Yeah.
So we need to rethink this. And of course, I need to say this, that the liberation dividend, some 28 years after democracy, has not borne the fruits we would like to see and ought to see amongst our people. Indeed, a minority has tended to benefit from Sandton to Stellenbosch, and it will continue that way, unfortunately, if we don't take care of the weakest links in our society. That social cohesion is simply not there, and we need to attend to it very, very urgently.
You talk about, the labeling and saying that it can't just be a criminality. The issue of illegal immigration is turning into something else at this point than mere dissatisfaction with illegal immigration. And as you say, more than just a criminality. Some might say that it's taking a xenophobic turn. What are your thoughts on this, and what drives all of this? I mean, you mentioned the issue of inequality. And some have said, that foreign nationals have become a sort of easy scapegoat for the real underlying issues and problems in the country. Would you label it as just the inequality issue that you've spoken about?
I think it's being removed from the processes that many of us who benefit from this system don't recognize as passing the majority, those living on the periphery of our society, who we only note when such things happen. That is a glaring feature of our society. We need to attend to it. We need to actually have a better approach, not only to immigration and to persons who arrive here seeking a better future, but we need to actually have a better way to deal at a social blanket level with people who, and here's a statistic that I've mentioned to you before, June last year's statistic, 74.7% of mid-teens to mid-20s are out of school, out of work. Now, those persons arrested are likely to be youth, and we can see that they will continue to be socialized in the cauldron of violence. Our democracy grew from the cauldron of violence, and that violence perpetuates itself in all sorts of ways. If it's not gender-based, if it's not a rape of children, it is this kind of acting out against ourselves and unable to acknowledge it in those we would label as other Africans, illegals, etc. So all of that needs to be considered.
Yeah.
But we need to start somewhere, and that somewhere is to take the cries of such communities to heart. Recall that this happened last year in the Eastern Cape against Somalis. So it'll happen all the time unless we have a national program of engagement with communities. We can't rush to such communities whenever such things happen. We should be preventing them. If we have the levels of intelligence that the minister mentioned in the clip earlier, then that intelligence needs to be having an early warning system. If we, and SABC has covered some of the flights across our borders, our porous borders, where soldiers just look on and allow this to happen. All of that, there's nobody brought to book. If we can see action ensuing from such gross transgressions, then I think we would be on the way to changing it. But we also need to actually take into confidence such communities living on the periphery to understand what the issues are, but to give them hope that government is doing something about it. Flo, note that the last elections, local government, were actually run in large measure in major metropolitan areas on this issue of illegal foreign nationals, however these groups want to portray them, and making it their ticket in that election. Now, that's a local government election platform, and this matter loomed large. So it is quite serious. It needs to be looked at, because you can't go into any of our neighboring countries and do even a quarter of the things that our communities allege that undocumented or even legally documented persons do in our communities. There should be an audit of housing, for instance, because in 2008, that was one of the issues raised in Alex. Nobody has done that. Indeed, we know in many cases, people from other places have benefited at the expense of local citizens. Ultimately, the job of any government is to protect its citizens, from such incidents, but also from ourselves, and giving vent to this kind of anger and actually murderous activity when we find somebody we think is a foreigner.
All right. Prof, thank you so very much for giving us your time here, and certainly that institutional memory that you have certainly gives us a lot to think about and gives us a lot of context. Thanks very much to you, Prof. Saths Cooper, weighing in on developments in Diepsloot.